My husband walked out on me the exact day I learned my mom had left me a fortune. Not a week later, not after we'd processed our grief, the same day. I still had dirt from the cemetery on my shoes and mascara streaks on my face from crying at the lawyer's office when I opened my front door and saw Ethan dragging a suitcase down our hallway. For a second, my brain genuinely could not put the two things together. My mom's voice was still in my head. The lawyer's words were still echoing, roughly $1.6 million Mrs. Hart held in trust, and there was my husband zipping up a suitcase like he was late for a flight. "Ethan?" I croaked. What are you doing?" He didn't look shocked. He didn't even look guilty. He just straightened up, slid the handle of the suitcase up with this little click, and said very calmly, "Liv, I'm done. This marriage isn't working. I'm moving out." I just stared at him. "We buried my mom 4 days ago." He shifted his weight. "I know the timing's not ideal, but there's never going to be a good time for this, is there?" My hand tightened around the folder from the lawyer's office. "You knew I was meeting her lawyer today." He glanced at the folder, then away. "Yeah, I assumed you'd be talking about the house, her accounts. But this isn't about that. This is about us. We've been over for a while. You know that." Somewhere in the back of my mind, something small and cold said, "He waited until the money was real." Out loud, I whispered, "You're leaving me now?" He sighed like I was being dramatic. "We'll do it properly. I'll have a lawyer draw everything up. You'll be taken care of, okay?" That phrase, "taken care of," made my skin crawl, like I was some problem he was making sure was handled. He walked past me, rolled the suitcase out to the driveway, and shoved it into the trunk of his car. He didn't hug me. He didn't say he was sorry. He just got in, started the engine, and drove away. I stood in the doorway of our little house in Columbus, Ohio, watching his taillights disappear, with my dead mom's legal paperwork in my hands and this roaring sound in my ears. That was the moment my whole life cracked open. To understand why it hit like that, you have to know a bit about where I came from and who my mom was. It was always just me and her. My dad bailed when I was 2, and he was more of a cautionary story than an actual person in my life. Mom worked at the Kroger on Main Street for years, cashier, then customer service, then assistant manager. And then, when that still didn't cover everything, she picked up night cleaning shifts at the community college. We lived in a tiny 2-bedroom house on the edge of town, beige siding, chain link fence, squeaky screen door. If something broke, she fixed it herself, or she did without. We never had name brand anything, but the bills were always paid and there was always food on the table. That was her pride. When I was 15, she shoved a stack of bills at me one night at the kitchen table and said, "You learn this now, Liv. Nobody's going to rescue you. You budget, you save, you pay your own way." I rolled my eyes back then. I wanted to go to the movies, not learn about interest rates. But it stuck, that idea of not expecting anyone else to fix your life. I became a nurse. It felt like the natural thing, practical, stable, something useful. I worked crazy shifts, but I liked knowing I made a difference, even if my paycheck didn't reflect how exhausting it was. Then, when I was 24, I met Ethan. He came into the ER with his friend, who'd sliced his hand open doing something stupid with a drone. Ethan was the one cracking jokes, charming the nurses, asking the doc questions like he had a right to be in the conversation. Later, when I was on my break in the cafeteria, he found me. "You the one who saved my buddy's guitar playing career?" he asked, holding up a coffee like a peace offering. "I just handed the doctor the sutures," I said. I was tired, hair in a messy bun, scrubs wrinkled. He didn't seem to care. He told me he worked in finance at a mid-sized firm downtown, helping people build their future, as he put it. He made it sound noble. He talked about the market like it was this living thing he understood. Compared to my life of night shifts and grocery runs with coupons, he seemed exciting. He asked about my family. I told him it was just me and my mom. "No siblings?" he asked. "Nope, just the 2 of us." He nodded slowly. She must be proud. Raising you on her own like that, that's a big deal. She own or rent? I didn't think much of it. Own, somehow. Tiny house. He smiled. Smart woman. Land's the only thing they're not making more of. Back then, it just sounded like something a finance guy would say. I didn't see the way his eyes sharpened for a second. We started dating. He brought me lunch at the hospital on my long shifts. He bought my mom flowers the first time he met her. I watched him sit at our old laminate kitchen table and listen to her stories about scanning groceries, and I thought, wow, he gets it. Mom was polite, but there was a stiffness in her shoulders. On the car ride home after he took us out for dinner one night, she said, "He's smooth, I'll give him that." I smiled. "You don't like him?" She hesitated. "I don't know him yet. He talks a lot about money." "He works in finance," I pointed out. "That's his job. This is life." She glanced at me. "Just keep your eyes open, okay? Don't let anyone make you feel stupid about money. You're not." I thought she was overreacting. Ethan had this way of making me feel seen, special. He'd say, "You're the most grounded woman I've ever met, Liv. Not like these girls obsessed with labels." It felt like a compliment. I didn't realize until later it was also a way of positioning himself as the expert in all the practical stuff. We moved in together after a year. He suggested a joint account. "We're a team now," he said, kissing the top of my head. "Makes no sense to split everything. We'll put both paychecks in, pay all the bills out of there, and I'll take care of the investing side." That's what I do. Mom wasn't thrilled. "What's wrong with 2 accounts and one shared one for bills?" she asked me quietly. "It's just easier this way," I said. "He's good with this stuff, Mom. I'm not trying to manage mutual funds after a 12-hour shift." She pressed her lips together like she wanted to argue and didn't. "Just remember, joint account means joint access," she said finally. "Make sure you always know what's going on. Don't let anyone make you feel like you can't ask questions. We got married in a little church with bad air conditioning and too many fake flowers. His parents helped us pay for the reception in a nice hotel ballroom. My mom wore the same dress she'd worn to my high school graduation. She slipped an envelope with $500 in it into my hand and said, 'For you, not for him.'" "Mom," I whispered, half exasperated, half touched. "We're a we now." She smiled, but her eyes were sad. "You're always you first, Liv. Don't forget that." We built a life. We bought a 3-bedroom house in a suburb on the edge of Columbus, the cheapest one on the block, but it had a yard and a half-finished basement Ethan called my future man cave. He kept saying things like, "Once we get some real capital behind us, we'll upgrade. This is just phase 1. And always, slipping into those conversations, was my mom's house. He'd joke about it. "When we get your mom's place, we can rent it out," he'd say. "Let somebody else's rent pay for our vacations. Or, if we ever hit a tight spot, we've always got that asset in our back pocket." The first few times I laughed along. The 10th time, I said, "Can you not talk about my mom like she's a scratch-off ticket, please?" He held up his hands. "Hey, she's the one who's always saying she'll leave it to you. I'm just thinking long-term." I didn't see the red flag for what it was. I just saw a husband thinking about our future. Then Mom got sick. It started with bruises she couldn't explain. Then the fatigue. Then the tests, the waiting. The doctor with kind eyes saying, "I'm so sorry, it's leukemia." My world shrank overnight. It was hospital rooms and chemo schedules, and watching this tough, sharp woman become someone small and tired in a gown 2 sizes too big. I cut my hours at work. I spent more nights in a plastic chair by her bed than I did in my own. Ethan said all the right things at first. "Whatever you need. We'll get through this." He brought takeout to the hospital once a week, made small talk with the nurses like he owned the place. But as the months dragged on and Mom didn't get better, his patience frayed. "You basically live there now," he said one night when I stumbled in at midnight and dropped my bag on the floor. "She's scared," I said. "She doesn't want to be alone." "She's got nurses," he said. "You've got a husband." "I've got a dying mother," I snapped. Who, by the way, spent 30 years killing herself at that store so I could have a shot at something better. I'm not abandoning her because you're lonely." He looked stung, then shut down. "Forget it," he muttered, walking away. That became the pattern. I poured myself into caring for Mom. He poured himself into, I don't know, work, his phone, nights out with clients, and the guys. There were suspicious things. A charge from a hotel in Cincinnati. On a weekend, he'd supposedly been at a conference in Chicago. Venmo payments to someone named Sam A. with little wine glass emojis. I asked questions half-heartedly, too tired to push. "Work drinks," he'd say. "You know how it is. I expense most of it anyway. Perks of the job." Mom saw more than she let on. One evening, when I was helping her into bed, she gripped my wrist with one bony hand. "You trust him?" she asked, out of nowhere. I hesitated. I want to." "That's not what I asked," she said, voice faint but sharp. I swallowed. "I don't know," I admitted. She looked at me for a long moment. "I talked to Mr. Blake," she said, "about the house, about everything. I changed some things. When I'm gone, you go see him. You listen to him. And you listen to your gut, not just your heart. Understand? Mom, don't..." She squeezed my hand, a ghost of her old strength. "Promise me." "I promise," I whispered. She died 6 weeks later. It was early morning, the sky just turning pink through the blinds. I was sitting beside her bed in the hospice wing, holding her hand, when her breathing turned shallow, then stopped. I sat there in that weird stillness, counting seconds, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. I called the nurse. I called Ethan. He said he couldn't get out of a meeting, but he'd come by tonight. He didn't. The funeral was a blur. A handful of her coworkers, some old neighbors, a few of my colleagues. Ethan stood stiffly beside me, his hand on my back, his eyes scanning his phone when he thought I couldn't see. After the service, a small, neat man with silver hair came up to me at the reception. "Ms. Hart," he said, "I'm Daniel Blake, your mother's attorney." I nodded, throat tight. "She mentioned you." "I'm very sorry for your loss," he said. "When you feel able, we should meet and go over her estate." She was quite detailed about how she wanted things handled. We set an appointment for the following Wednesday morning. Ethan didn't offer to come. "Big client presentation," he said, "but text me after, okay? Just so I know what we're dealing with. I mean, what she left you. Us." He corrected himself, but I heard it. I went to Mr. Blake's office alone. It was one of those old brick buildings downtown with creaky floors and the smell of paper and coffee. I sat across from his big oak desk while he opened a thick file with my mom's name on it. "Your mother was a very practical woman," he said. "We'd updated her will a few times over the years. About 3 years ago, she came in with some very clear concerns. She set up a trust." He slid a document toward me. "The Hart Family Trust. You are the sole beneficiary." I blinked at the pages. "A trust?" I repeated. The word sounded like something rich people had in movies, not something connected to my mom who bought off-brand cereal. He nodded. "She transferred her house into it, her retirement accounts, some investments. She also named the trust as beneficiary for a modest life insurance policy." I stared at the list. House value, retirement balances, investment accounts. When he said the total number, my brain stalled. $1.6 million approximately, he said calmly, depending on market fluctuations. I actually laughed. It burst out of me, slightly hysterical. "My mom?" I said. "My mom with the coupon binder?" "She was very disciplined," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "She lived below her means and saved consistently. Time and compounding did the rest." I couldn't process it. 1.6 million. The woman who'd patched her work shoes with duct tape had quietly become a millionaire. My eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked. "She didn't want you to count on it," he said gently. "She wanted you to build your own life, knowing she'd created a safety net in the background." He tapped another part of the document. "The key thing you need to know, Mrs. Hart, is this. This trust is your separate property. Your mother specifically instructed that it be protected from any current or future spouse. It cannot be divided in a divorce, cannot be accessed by anyone but you and the trustee, and is not to be used to pay off a spouse's debts. Divorce? I echoed, my stomach dropping. He hesitated. She was concerned, he said, about some things she'd observed. She also left you a letter. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name on it in her handwriting. I opened it with shaking fingers. Liv, it started. If you're reading this, it means I'm not around to nag you in person, so this is the next best thing. I smiled through the tears. She told me how proud she was, how much she loved me. Then, now we get to the part you're not going to like, she wrote. I don't trust Ethan. I tried to. I really did. But I've seen too much. My chest tightened. I saw him with another woman once, she went on. Outside that wine bar on High Street. He had his hand on her lower back like she belonged to him. They were laughing. He didn't see me. I didn't tell you because you seemed happy, and I thought maybe it was nothing. Then he started asking me very casually about my house, about whether I had life insurance, about whether you would inherit everything or if I'd split it to be fair. It didn't sit right. She explained how she went to Mr. Blake, how she asked a million questions, how she set up the trust so tight. He'd need the jaws of life to get into it. I hope I'm wrong, she wrote. I hope you and Ethan grow old together and this all feels like overkill. But if he ever makes you feel like you owe him this money, don't you dare believe it. I cleaned bathrooms at midnight for this. This is to protect you, not him. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. The tissue box on Mr. Blake's desk was, like Mom said, on the left. Your mother was very clear, he said quietly. Do you have any questions? Only about 1,000, but one pushed its way to the front. If we get divorced, he can't touch any of this? I asked. No, he said. As long as you don't commingle it with marital assets, which means don't move it into your joint accounts, don't use it to pay off joint debts, don't put his name on anything related to it, treat it like a locked box with your name on it. I nodded slowly. The cold, hard little voice in the back of my head spoke up again. He thinks this is half his. I drove home on autopilot, pulled into our driveway, walked in the door, and found Ethan with his suitcase. That was not an accident. There was no way it could be. He might have said it was about us, but those legal documents in my bag and my mom's warnings were screaming a different story. After he left, I sat on the floor of our hallway, backs of my shoulders against the front door, and let myself fall apart. I sobbed until my throat hurt, for my mom, for the marriage I thought I had, for the girl I'd been who thought merging bank accounts meant merging lives. Then slowly, the crying stopped. I wiped my face on the sleeve of my black cardigan, stood up, and walked to the kitchen table. I spread out the trust papers. It's that kind of inheritance, held in a separate trust, as non-marital property. The only way he'd get near it is if you volunteered it. And from what you've told me, that would be a mistake. What about everything else? I asked. The house, our savings, his 401k? That's marital, she said. Presumed to be split fairly, which doesn't always mean 50-50. If we can show he wasted money, gambling, affairs, secret loans, the court can give you a larger share to compensate. I swallowed. I think he's been cheating, and I know he's been spending money I don't understand. She leaned forward. Then the first thing we do is get the facts. Pull every statement you can. Bank, credit cards, any loans. If he left anything behind, old devices, mail, go through it. Don't tamper, don't hack, but anything in your shared home is fair game. The thought of digging into his private stuff made my stomach knot, but I heard my mom's voice again, clear as day. Listen to your gut. Don't let anyone make you feel stupid about money. So I did it. I turned our dining table into a document mountain. I logged into our joint account and printed a year's worth of statements. I called the bank and asked if there were any loans in both our names. The woman on the phone hesitated, then said, "There's the mortgage and the home equity line of credit." "The what?" I asked. "Home equity line," she repeated. "Opened 18 months ago. Current balance $42,700. My blood ran cold. Can you send me the original paperwork? I asked, my voice oddly calm. 2 days later, the envelope came. There it was. Application for a home equity line. Both our names typed neatly at the top. 2 signatures at the bottom. One was his. The other was supposed to be mine. It was close. Close enough that a bank clerk probably didn't look too hard. But I knew my own signature. That rushed, slightly tilted version of my name, it wasn't mine. He'd taken out a loan against our house, without telling me, and he'd faked my name to do it. My hands shook as I took photos of every page and sent them to Angela with the subject line, "He forged my signature." Her reply came fast. "Okay," she wrote, "this just escalated. We'll use this, and if you want to push, the bank will have some questions for him too." I put the papers down and went looking for his old tablet. He'd upgraded devices a few months earlier. The old one was in a drawer in the study. I plugged it in, waited for it to come back to life, and stared at the lock screen. 4 numbers. I tried our anniversary. It opened. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the home screen. Then I forced myself to move. There were text threads, email, some work apps. I searched his texts for my mom's name. For inheritance, for trust, nothing. Then I searched for my own name. A thread popped up with Liam, work. I opened it. "Once Liv gets her mom's place, we're golden," Ethan had written. "House is basically free equity. Might finally be able to get that lake house." Liam had replied, "Dude, dark, she has to die first." Ethan, "She's old and sick. It's going to happen. Might as well plan." My stomach flipped. He was talking about my mother like she was a line item. I scrolled further. Other bits jumped out. "Can't leave now, man. Been in this a decade. I'm not walking away with nothing. Once the money hits, I'll file. We'll split and I'll be set." And in a different thread, another name. Brooke. I opened it. There she was. Selfies of a blonde woman in her 30s, photos of their drinks, hotel rooms, "Miss you already" messages. And there, buried a few months back, Ethan. "I know you're sick of waiting. I just have to be smart. Once her mom passes and we know the numbers, I'll get out. I've earned my cut." Brooke. Feels gross. Ethan. "It's not like I want her to die, but it's going to happen. I'm not leaving tens of thousands, maybe more, on the table after putting all these years in. Then we'll be free. You, me, no more sneaking around." I read that 3 times, hoping I'd misread it. I hadn't. My grief for my mom flared into something else, something hot and sharp and cold at the same time. He hadn't just fallen out of love. He'd made a plan. He'd calculated. I forwarded the entire thread to my own email. I took screenshots. I backed them up. Then I shut the tablet, and for the first time since he left, I felt something like clarity. He thought he'd played this perfectly. He thought he'd stuck around just long enough to cash in, then bailed with a clear conscience because we weren't working anyway. He had no idea my mom had already built a wall around her money, and he had no idea just how much evidence he'd left lying around. Angela almost purred when I showed her everything. "This is remarkable," she said. "Painful, I know, but from a legal standpoint, it's powerful. We've got adultery, financial misconduct, intent to profit from your mother's death, and forgery. A judge is not going to like this." "What does it actually change?" I asked. "He still can't touch the trust, right?" "Right," she said. "That was always off the table. What this does is let us ask the court for a much larger share of what is on the table. The house, our joint savings, his retirement accounts. We'll also ask the court to assign that home equity debt to him and him alone." "And the bank?" I asked. "That loan scares me." She nodded. "We'll notify them that you dispute the signature. They'll have to investigate. They may try to come after both of you anyway. Banks hate admitting they messed up. But with expert analysis, we have a strong case that you didn't authorize it. Worst case, if they dig in their heels, we'll use some of your non-trust savings to negotiate. But we keep your mom's money out of it." I shook my head. "I promised her I wouldn't use it to fix his mess," I said. "I'm not breaking that." Good, she said simply. We filed. He filed back. His petition was full of phrases like irreconcilable differences and emotional abandonment. He admitted to a brief affair, but called it a symptom, not the cause. He listed my mom's estate as something to be divided. When he realized what the trust actually meant, he showed up at my door. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in leggings and one of Mom's old t-shirts, scrubbing a casserole dish, when the doorbell rang. I opened it and there he was, dark circles under his eyes, jaw clenched. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped out and closed the door behind me. "We are talking." He shoved his hands in his pockets. "You didn't mention the trust," he said. "No hello, no how are you?" "You didn't ask," I said. His nostrils flared. "You knew I'd assume your mom's money was marital. Any reasonable person would. To hide that." "I didn't hide anything," I cut in. "My mom chose how to leave her money. She told me to talk to her lawyer. That's what I did. You're the one who tried to time leaving me for the day you thought you'd legally locked in half." He flinched. "That's not true." "Once the money hits, I'll file. I've earned my cut," I quoted. "Ring any bells?" His mouth dropped open. "You went through my private messages?" "I opened a tablet in my house that was still logged into your accounts," I said, "and I saw the truth. Don't pretend this is about privacy when you forged my name on a loan." His face went pale. "You can't prove that." "We have a handwriting expert who disagrees," I said, "and bank records, and texts where you bragged about leveraging the house without me noticing." He stared at me, breathing hard. "You're really going to try to destroy me over this?" he said. "I gave you 10 years of my life." "I gave you 10 years of mine," I said. "I just didn't realize you had an exit date written down." He tried a different tactic. His shoulders slumped. "Look, Liv," he said, voice softening. "We've both made mistakes. Maybe I didn't handle things right, but you checked out of this marriage a long time ago. I was alone, scared. I made bad choices. But we don't have to scorch the earth. We could what?" I asked. "Fix it? Get back together? Use my mom's trust to clear the slate and start fresh?" I used air quotes. His eyes flickered. That had been a thought in his head. "You're better than this," he tried. "You're not a vengeful person." "I'm not," I said. "But I'm done being a doormat. I'm not using her money to bail you out. I'm not letting you walk away with more than you deserve. That's not revenge. That's just finally playing defense." He looked at me for a long second, like he was trying to recognize me and failing. Then he muttered, "You'll regret this," and stalked down the path to his car. A week later, I got an email from a name I didn't recognize. Subject, "We need to talk about Ethan." It was from Brooke. "Hi, Olivia," it said. "I'm sure I am the last person you want to hear from. I'm the other woman. Or one of them, anyway. I'm not proud of that. But I've recently learned that almost everything Ethan told me about you was a lie. He said you were separated. He said you didn't care what he did. He said you knew about us. I found out you buried your mom last month and he left you the same week. That's not what he told me." "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I also know he's been trying to use both of us. He talked about your mom's money like it was a lottery ticket. If you'd be willing to meet, I have messages and receipts that might help you. If not, I can send them to your lawyer. I just don't want him to get away with this. Brooke." I stared at the screen, jaw clenched. My first instinct was to hit delete. My second was to forward it to Angela. "She could have useful evidence," Angela replied. "If you feel up to it, meet her somewhere public. No talk of legal deals, just listen and collect. If not, tell her to send everything to me." Curiosity won. That, and a weird little sliver of solidarity. I wasn't the only one he'd lied to. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She wore jeans and a blazer, hair in a low ponytail, no makeup. She looked normal, tired, human. "Olivia?" she asked, hovering near my table. "Yeah," I said. She sat, fingers wrapped tight around her cup. "Thank you for agreeing to this," she said. "If you throw that coffee in my face, I won't blame you." I huffed a laugh I didn't really feel. You weren't the one who made vows to me, I said. He was. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. For what it's worth, I really didn't know the truth, she said. He told me you were basically roommates, that you'd fallen out of love years ago, that you were only staying married because your mom was sick and you didn't want to upset her. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded for her to continue. He said you were fine with him seeing other people, she said, that you both agreed the marriage was over and everything but paperwork. He made you sound cold, like you didn't care. He's good at making people sound however he needs them to sound, I said. She winced. Yeah, I fell for it. She pulled a folder out of her bag and slid it toward me. These are screenshots of our texts, printed emails, hotel receipts. All the times he said things like, once her mom's gone, we're set, or I just have to hang on until the will is read. I opened it. There it all was, his words in black and white. Her mom's house alone is $250K easy. In this state, that's half mine if we're still married when it hits. She'll never see it coming. She trusts me too much. And a week before my mom died, can't leave now. I've invested too much time. Something inside me went very, very still. Not numb, just focused. Why are you doing this? I asked quietly. She looked down at her coffee. Because when I realized he'd been lying to me about you, I started rethinking everything, she said. If he could talk about you like that, his wife, whose mom was literally dying, what was he saying about me when I wasn't around? To him, we were both assets, options. She swallowed. When he found out about the trust, he flipped, started ranting about how unfair it was, how your mom had poisoned you against him. Then he said maybe he'd played it wrong, that he should win you back and get you to invest the money with him instead. That's when I lost any remaining illusions I had. I packed a bag and left that night. My stomach twisted. He said that? About winning me back for the money? She nodded. I figured you should know. In case he tries to show up with flowers and apologies. If he does, it's not because he had some grand epiphany about love. It's because he's looking at your bank balance. I let out a shaky breath. He already tried, I said. You just confirmed what I suspected. We talked for almost an hour. I didn't forgive her. That would have been too easy for both of us, but I did believe her, and I took that folder straight to Angela. From there, things moved. Angela subpoenaed his work expense reports. Remember all those client dinners and work trips? Turned out a lot of them were dates with Brooke, charged to the company card and labeled as business. When his firm's legal department saw the records, copies of receipts with his handwritten notes like client dev next to a hotel pool bar bill, matched with texts of him sending Brooke selfies from the same pool, they launched an internal investigation. I didn't call his boss. I didn't send a dramatic email. I just let the legal process play out. 2 months later, I got a short, angry text from Ethan. Hope you're happy. I'm suspended. Might get fired, it said. You always knew how to hit where it hurts. I stared at the screen for a second, then put my phone down. I didn't reply. He did get fired. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that they'd parted ways over ethics concerns. There was talk of them coming after him to repay misused funds. His reputation in that world, the world he'd been so proud of, took a big hit. When the divorce hearing finally came, almost a year after my mom died, I walked into that courtroom with my head high. I wore a simple black dress and my mom's small silver pendant. Angela sat beside me. Across from us, Ethan looked smaller, thinner. The confident, joking guy I'd met in the ER was gone. In his place was a man with haunted eyes, clenching his jaw and straightening his tie over and over. The judge listened. Angela laid everything out. The trust, my mom's letter, the forged loan, the affair, the emails about walking away with half, the messages Brooke had brought, the company investigation. Ethan's lawyer tried to spin it. He said Ethan had made mistakes. He tried to frame the timing as coincidental, the loan as a misunderstanding, the affair as a symptom of a dying marriage. But paper doesn't lie like people do. His own words, his own signatures, his own expense reports were there, staring the judge in the face. At one point, the judge read that line out loud. I just have to hang on until the will is read, and then looked up at him. Mr. Hart, she said, do you understand how this looks? He shifted in his seat. I was venting, he said weakly. I never meant to hurt anyone. You timed your request for separation for the exact week your wife buried her mother and learned the contents of the will, she said. You forged her signature on a substantial loan. You used marital funds on an affair. Intent matters in this courtroom. In the end, the ruling was almost exactly what Angela had predicted. The trust stayed entirely mine, untouchable. The house was awarded to me, with the forged home equity debt assigned to Ethan's side of the equation. The judge even commented that she hoped the bank would review its procedures for verifying signatures. She made it very clear that I was not responsible for that loan. Our remaining joint savings and his 401k were divided, but not 50-50. Because of his dissipation of assets, I got about 70%. There was no alimony from me to him. The judge said, very pointedly, that his current financial struggles were a direct result of his own choices. As we walked out into the hallway, papers in hand, adrenaline making my hands shake, Ethan rushed up behind me. You think you've won? He hissed. You think sitting on your mom's hoard makes you some kind of queen? You'll blow through it. You don't know how to manage that kind of money. You'll come crawling one day. I turned and looked at him, really looked. This was a man who had tried to turn my mother's death into a payout, who had gambled with our house, who had cheated, lied, and schemed. I don't need a king, I said quietly, and I managed just fine before you. I'll manage even better now that I'm not patching the holes you punch in my life. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was nothing left to say. That was the last time we spoke. Life after that wasn't some instant happily ever after. I still missed my mom so much it hurt. I still had nights where I'd wake up, heart pounding, dreaming about bank statements and courtrooms. Money doesn't erase that. But slowly things settled. The bank, faced with the threat of a fraud complaint and the handwriting analysis, agreed to pursue Ethan alone for the home equity line. They removed my name from it. If he defaulted, and he did, they could sue him. Not me. My house was safe. I kept working as a nurse. I went back to full-time, not because I had to, but because I wanted a life that wasn't just numbers on a screen. I went to a few sessions with a financial planner recommended by Mr. Blake, someone who talked to me like I was an adult, not some silly woman who needed managing. We set up a budget for the trust. I didn't touch the principal. I used a small, reasonable draw each year to do things my mom would have approved of, pay off my student loans, fix the leaky roof, replace my 15-year-old car before it died on the freeway, and I did something for her. I used part of the trust's earnings to start a small scholarship at the community college, the Maria Hart Night Shift Scholarship, for adults going back to school while working nights. The first year, when I met the recipient, a tired woman in a grocery store uniform, just like my mom used to wear, who was studying to become a medical assistant. I cried in the parking lot afterward. That's what my mom's money was for, not to fund Ethan's lake house dreams, to make someone else's road a little less brutal. Sometimes I still get updates about Ethan. Columbus is small that way. Someone will mention seeing him at a bar, or hear he's selling cars now, or that he moved back in with his parents for a while. Every once in a while, some unknown number will text me something like, "Hey stranger, can we talk?" I block it without replying. I don't need to hear his spin anymore. People ask me sometimes, usually in that curious, nosy way, "Don't you ever feel guilty that you got all that money and he got nothing?" And I say honestly, no, because it was never ours, it was hers, and she chose to give it to me. Ethan thought staying married long enough meant he was entitled to half of her life's work. He saw my mother's death as an opportunity. He saw me as a bridge to a better lifestyle. In the end, my revenge wasn't screaming at him in public or keying his car. It was a stack of legal documents and a trust deed with his name nowhere on it. It was a judge looking at his emails and saying, no. It was his own greed slamming the door in his face. The real revenge, though, is quieter. It's me, sitting on my mom's old couch in the house she left me, coffee in hand, not wondering if my husband has drained our account overnight. It's checking my bank balance and feeling calm instead of sick. It's knowing that if something goes wrong, if the car breaks down, if the roof leaks, if I get sick, I don't have to beg anyone for help. My mom made sure of that. And I honored her by not handing that safety net to the man who tried hardest to cut it. He lost the money he thought he'd earned by putting in the years. He lost his job when his cheating and expense scams caught up with him. He lost the house he thought he could leverage forever. But the biggest loss? He lost me. He lost the woman who would have stood with him through any honest struggle, who would have worked night shifts beside him if he'd actually been a partner instead of a parasite. He walked out the day I inherited my mom's money thinking he was making a smart move. Turns out it was the worst financial decision he ever made.